Hello, laziale all over the world. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. This is probably the only episode I would never wanted to record it, but we have to, Alistair McKenzie, hello. We have to remember Sinisa Mihajlovic, who left us this week. Um, Not only because he was part of the Lazio that won the last Scudetto, but because he always, and probably one of the things I love more of Sinisa, he's one of the few former Lazio player who always said he was a Lazio fan. He never doubt about it. He never, you know, Alessandro Nesta is an example, right? He should be saying everywhere that he's a Lazio fan, but he's not. Sinisa Mihajlovic, even when he came to Rome with different football team, he always said, I'm a Lazio fan. I'm happy to be at the Stadio Olimpico. So it's a big tragedy, especially because maybe people are not aware. He has 5 kids, and the youngest one is 16 years old. So very young. And, you know, 53 years old is still very young to die, Alistair.
Yeah, really, way too young. I mean, it's horrible news. I mean, it's been incredible, really, the courage with which he's kind of battled this illness. I mean, it's not really a surprise to anyone who's kind of spent the last 20-25 years kind of following his career to see the way he's kind of he took on that challenge, but it's still absolutely remarkable, the way he approached it. And I think that kind of warrior spirit, that the way he battles, the way he fights, is a big part of what made him so loved by, I mean, obviously Lazio fans above all, but pretty much everywhere he went, to be honest. And it's a huge loss uh, for us as Laziale, but it's a huge loss for Italian football as a whole. He touched so many different clubs, so many different people, across his career, both as a player and then as a coach. And you saw that we're recording today on Wednesday. The Is that right? Is it Wednesday today? Tuesday? I don't know.
It's Tuesday, but
His
don't know,
his,
maybe,
fu- his
maybe in
funeral was
Scotland is Wednesday.
yesterday. The point is, his funeral was yesterday, and
Yes.
and and you could really see what the point I'm making yesterday, because the amount of people from the world of Italian football, from bridging all sorts of divides from all sorts of eras, who were there to say goodbye to him. It was a really fitting send off to an absolute great of Italian football.
Yes, and the church was full. There were a lot of former players. There was Lazio team all there, Bologna team as well. Let's not remember he's been sacked like 2 months ago, something like that, 2.5 months ago. So not far away. And yeah, it was. We are a Lazio podcast, but Totti was there and he cried for all the ceremony. So this tells you how much he was loved, because he had this mask, if you want, of being a very rude guy, but he was sweet and he was a nice guy. There are so many memories that other former players have about Mihajlovic. So he was loved. And the biggest regret, Alistair, is that he always said, one day I will be managing Lazio. And it's terrible to think that he will never achieve it. And, I was looking forward because I thought he's a huge Lazio fan. He's a big character. I thought he managing Lazio, it would be a lot of fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, even in the coaching career, he did have there've been a lot of kind of great moments in terms of, the kind of lines he's come out with, and the kind of things he said. And I think that's the thing. He's managed to he always managed to intertwine that kind of attitude you're talking about, that kind of like quite confrontational style, but with a bit of humor. I think he was quite a funny guy as well, and at certain times, and seemed to know how to strike that balance. And yeah, it's interesting actually what you're saying about You mentioned Nesta already, and obviously an ex-teammate of his from that great team. And it's quite an interesting comparison because I think a big part of the reason for me that Mihajlovic is so loved is that Lazio fans are obsessed with players who have that grinta, that kind of warrior-like fighting spirit, and a lot of the time, even players who have limited technical ability can become fan favorites because they have the
Yeah.
right kind of attitude. And we've seen that recently, even with the likes of Caicedo, even with Patrick. People like this have become popular just because they show the right kind of attitude. But with Mihajlovic, it was both. He had an absolute elite level, both of that grinta, that attitude, and of the technical level. So he was the kind of perfect storm of a Lazio player, really, to become a fan favorite. And while Nesta was the Roman-born, the club captain, and probably one of the best ever technical defenders, he didn't have that heart on his sleeve kind of passion in the same way that Mihajlovic did. And it's incredible that Mihajlovic is even in a discussion with a kind of Roman-born laziale from birth when you were talking about popularity, but he is. He absolutely is, because of that combination of things he brought to the club, I'd say.
Sven-Goran Eriksson said that he went to Sergio Cragnotti, the president of Lazio, and he said, if you want to win the Scudetto, you have to sign me, Mihajlovic and Veron. He did, and Lazio won the Scudetto. And he didn't want Mihajlovic because of the free kicks, but because of his leadership, because he was one of those guys who never wanted to lose. And you could see it in the pitch, you could see it as a manager. But I really think that the addition of Mihajlovic, who, let's not forget, arrived at Lazio when he was, on his 30s. So his career was not finished, but near the end, and still had a huge impact because of his leadership, because of his mentality. I really think that he had a huge impact on Lazio Scudetto, and I'm not talking only about the free kicks.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask you about that. You were a lot closer to the Scudetto team than I was, and what do you think it would have been possible to achieve everything that was achieved at that time without it? Because you look at the trophy haul, you look at when he arrives and the success that comes after that. The success, the kind of progress of that team starting to win things happens, I guess, from the mid-90s. But it's only when Mihajlovic arrives and that team is properly put together that the trophies really start falling in. The Scudetto comes, European trophies, and so on. So, how important do you remember him being in terms of a figure, someone who sets standards, someone who's actually a winner? Because he came to Lazio as someone who'd won the European Cup, let's not forget. And how influential do you think he was?
I thought he was highly influential. His winning mentality had a huge impact. Again, that Lazio team had him, Veron, Mancini, Simeone, all these type of players who wanted only to win. They couldn't afford to lose. And I don't think it's a coincidence that if you go and see Mihajlovic became a manager, Mancini a manager, Simeone a manager, they had the winning mentality and the leadership of Mihajlovic, who would push also the others. The thing is, Mihajlovic had this leadership and he wasn't afraid to say something to maybe a bigger player, maybe a more important player like Nesta or the others. He wasn't scared at all, and that's really important. Obviously, you cannot win if you're just a leader. He was a great football player, he was a great defender, and Sven-Goran Eriksson mentioned it. One of the good things of having Mihajlovic is that in some matches we could directly pick Marcelo Salas or Simone Inzaghi directly from the defense. We just needed a kick from Mihajlovic, So that's how important he was. And there's so many memories that come up. I remember once when Veron came to Lazio, and there was a free kick in the first match of the season, I think. And Veron went there and took the ball. And Mihajlovic looked at him and said, "You must be really crazy to take a free kick out of me, Or you score this one, or you're out." And Veron luckily scored. So this is Mihajlovic. Veron was already a top player, right? And this was, his swagger. Everybody probably will remember Lazio Sampdoria, where he scored a hat trick from free kick. He's the only player to have scored a hat trick on a free kick. And he went to Mancini. Well, no, better. Mancini went to Mihajlovic and said, "I will give you €1 million for every goal you score." And he said, "Okay, I will score three." And this is Mihajlovic. He scored a hat trick on a free kick and said to Ferron, that was the goalkeeper, Ferron, that was the goalkeeper of Sampdoria, "Don't move, because if you move, I will score on your side." And in fact, if you go and watch that match, Ferron never moves, and Mihajlovic score on the other side.
Yeah.
So this is Mihajlovic. This is a, I mean, a player that will never be forgotten from Lazio fans.
I mean, the free kicks were, I mean, just crazy. I did rewatch that, the hat trick against Samp, and it's amazing because the first two are so similar that I thought I'd just seen a replay of the first one, because he almost does exactly the same thing twice. And it wasn't just it wasn't like just that kind of Pirlo-esque ability to bend it over a wall and into the top corner. It was also the distance. It's so rare, really, in football to find someone who's that much of a set piece threat that opposite teams almost need to kind of plan around that, because from anywhere he's going to be a problem. And that was always the case with Mihajlovic. He was scoring free kicks from 30, 35 yards. It wasn't just that he was able to kind of dink them over the wall and in. He was absolutely anywhere was really a threat for this guy. It's incredible. And I should say as well, I mean, I think he's got the record. I looked it up earlier, and apparently 28 goals from free kicks. I think 28 goals is a really, really good amount for, an attacking fielder, I would say, in that kind of span that he was there. And there he is doing it all from set pieces. It's incredible.
Yeah, he missed more penalty than free kicks. That's something unbelievable to think about. And the other funny thing, Alistair, is that if you go and watch some of his matches, usually when you take a free kick, you try to get 1 yard, 1 meter to have it closer to the goal. He was pushing the ball the other side. He needed more space. 35 meters were better for him. 40 was better, because he was kicking the ball so hard that he needed space to let the ball fly down. And that's why you can see in some circumstances he's moving the ball backwards. I mean, there's a goal from Fiorentina that he's taking this free kick probably from 45 yards, 45 minutes, something like that, and it's impressive. And they Toldo in goal. It's not that you say, well, it's a bad goalkeeper. Toldo was one of the best goalkeepers in the world at that time, and still he wasn't able even to touch it. So that's Sinisa Mihajlovic. Think about Luis Alberto. How often did he try to score from corner kicks? Mihajlovic scored from corner kick. I remember
watching videos. Yeah, I was going to say he's been on YouTube.
I remember Sinisa scoring from corner kicks, and he was unbelievable. And again, he was playing with Nesta. Then he was playing with Koto. He was playing with Stam. I mean, that defense was really scary, right? Because
unbelievable. And versatile as well. He was able to play on the left, in the center. He was used to play on the left and left in midfield as well. But yeah, I mean, his technique, that left foot, is, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it, and will do again. I mean, it was kind of fitting. People haven't forgotten either. After the funeral yesterday, when the coffin was taken out and the fans were crowding in Piazza della Repubblica, and they're all singing "Ese tira Sinisa ego," like, if Sinisa shoots, it's a goal. And usually there's a lot of hyperbole around football chants, but on that occasion, it's not really that much of an exaggeration, is it? It was kind of, if he found himself with an opportunity to shoot, I don't know if the kind of statisticians were really clocking these things at that time, but his kind of conversion rate from shot to goal must have been pretty high, to be honest.
Yes, definitely. He was a threat. I remember Lazio scoring at Stamford Bridge, winning 2-1, the free kick of Sinisa Mihajlovic, directly in goal. I mean, when he was taking the free kick, you already, knowing if he would have scored. He said that when he was taking the free kick, he already knew if he would score, and the fans love that, and the fans love his attitude. So he was a terrific player, a terrific guy, and there's another memory. What was it? 3 years ago, something like that. He was linked with Roma. Do you remember? He would. There was a chance he would become the Roma manager. And as I told already, he has 5 kids. One thing we didn't mention: he was living in Rome. When he came to Rome, all his wife is from Rome, and he was living here, Colina Fleming. He was living with all his family, and even if he moved, he managed Catania, Milan, and Bologna. The family was always here in Rome, so he often came back in Rome the days he was off. And there was this rumor that Mihajlovic was going to Roma. I think Sabatini wanted him in Roma. It was that period, and the son came to Sinisa and said, "Dad, you cannot go to Roma to manage Roma. I won't be able to move outside the house if you become a Roma manager. All kids of Sinisa are Lazio fan." And so he said, "Okay, this is another reason why I won't go." And he never went to Roma. He said it wasn't the right move for him as a Lazio fan. Again, how many former Lazio players wouldn't refuse Roma opportunity? Don't know, right?
Yeah, and uh, I mean, it's amazing to think there again, going back to the point that there's this link, despite there not being the kind of born and raised in Rome kind of link. I mean, Mihajlovic is essentially an Italian, or was, I should say. Um, by the time he passed away, he's kind of an
Yeah.
honorary Italian. The way he spoke, the way he lived his life, everything about it, and he had this really really deep link to the country and to the club, obviously. And it is rare. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's rare to find people in the game who are still in the game that are willing to actually wear their heart on their sleeve and be honest about that. And I would extend that even beyond players and coaches. Even journalists and people in the media aren't honest about things like who they support, because it's seen as being something that kind of compromises you in a certain way, which is nonsense. Because the reason people are involved in this game in the first place is that they care about it and they're passionate about it, and that passion comes from having connections, having love for a club and love for players and teammates and so on. And so it's just really refreshing, and it was his that kind of honesty. And um, yeah, I think people absolutely love that about him. I should say we got one comment. I do apologize to any listeners we've got who were hoping to chip in here, because I was quite late in actually asking people for comments. But we did get one saying it would be great if the club could have a permanent memorial in some way to one of our greats. He scored plenty in that Scudetto winning season, one of a core of players that ensured that title. I think that's a good point, isn't it? What do you think? Can you see the club doing something like that, some sort of memorial?
Now, this is funny because I thought Mihajlovic and Lotito didn't have a very good relationship. I thought Mihajlovic spoke about it because I think when he was signing to Roma, he said, "Well, my dream was to go to Lazio, but Lotito never called me, so I don't think he likes me." And I think he didn't have a very good relationship with Tarek, but I don't have the proof, so I cannot say it's 100% true. But the funny thing is, because Lotito, when unfortunately Mihajlovic passed away, said that Lazio will organize a lot of events to promote, to remember Sinisa Mihajlovic. So I'm really looking forward for that. The first game of the season will be an away game, so don't think it's going to happen. But the next game will be at home, so I expect something big for Mihajlovic. Don't know what, but yeah, I expect uh, something big for Sinisa Mihajlovic. And it's strange because it's not that he's been playing for Lazio for 10 years or so, but he had a huge impact. And the years at Rome were enough to make him a Lazio fan. So Yeah, I think
They have got a bit better at doing stuff like this recently, I
yeah,
would say. I mean, there's been the Curva Maestrelli, I guess, and the Piazza Biagerelli. So I mean, I think they're starting to connect with these kind of things, but obviously those two examples are kind of very historic parts of the Lazio story. So I wouldn't expect anything quite on that line, but there has to be some sort of memorial. I would expect that for sure.
yeah, and let's not forget that the oldest son of Mihajlovic was playing the Lazio Youth Academy. So they're all Lazio supporters, which is great. And the other thing I wanted to mention, Alistair, is that Veron, for example, tweeted about Sinisa Mihajlovic. The same thing Sergio Conceição said, your family will be always in our heart. You have another family here in Portugal. We will help uh, your kids. So, and this tells you how, you know, how the relationship with that players were very close, even if they didn't meet very often, obviously, because Conceição was managing Porto, he was managing Bologna, etc. But yeah, the relationship was great. Even Sven Goran Eriksson talked about Mihajlovic. So Roberto Mancini said he lost a brother.
Mm.
So yeah, this tells you how much he has been loved. And every time, every single time Mihajlovic came to play against Lazio, the fans always chant, he always came to the Curva Nord. The fans loved him. So, yeah, I mean, of all the Lazio players, former Lazio players, uh, he was one of the most loved from the fans.
Yeah, and those relationships you talk about, that the lasting effect he had on people, and you could even see that through the fact that the pallbearers who were bringing his coffin out to the church yesterday, you had Mancini there, Stankovic, Di Silvestri, Lombardo. I can't
Yeah,
remember who else, but and as well as obviously all the everyone in the church. You know, the entire Lazio squad was there. The entire Bologna squad was there. Like you mentioned, Totti, De Rossi, Donnarumma. I mean, Red Star sent people. I mean, it was a huge, meeting of the great the great of Italian football and beyond, really. Do you think he gets enough respect outside of Italy, though, in terms of his ability as a player and as a coach?
I didn't check, but if I'm not wrong, L'Equipe made a title something like "The King of Free Kicks died." So maybe a sort of
Mm.
recognition. Obviously, he's played pretty much all his career in Italy, even though he won the Champions League with the Red Star Belgrade, right? So, but he moved to Rome very early for Roma when he was young, and luckily things didn't work out for them. But yeah, I thought probably the best player in the world taking free kicks. I mean, better than Pirlo, better than Juninho. I don't know. I think he was by far the best player.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, those two examples you've come up with are good ones, because I think I remember Juninho for the long range smashers, or like Roberto Carlos, those kind of ones, and Pirlo for the kind of the more kind of technical dinking it over ones. Whereas I think Sinisa could do both, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's probably the lasting legacy people outside of Italy do remember, is those free kicks, because it's such extraordinary ability. But yeah, obviously all the things we've talked about goes way beyond that. And his coaching career, obviously not quite as successful as his playing career, but still he still had some great spells at clubs and did really well with Catania. I thought, he did do a very good job as well with Bologna before
Yeah,
things went a bit stale this season. But the one kind of constant was this, and it's such a Sinisa-like trait, this complete conviction in himself, and especially when it came to young players, and to say that, if I see talent here, I'm going to back you. And the Torino owner Cairo was at the funeral yesterday, and he made a comment about that, saying that he would launch these players, and then he would basically, from that moment on, they would have his backing to the end. That's it. And that said a lot about him. And the most famous one, obviously, being him giving Donnarumma the gloves at Milan when he was 16. But this went across so many different clubs. And Bologna, he was doing it with tons of players. I did an interview with Aaron Hickey, obviously the Scottish guy who was at Bologna until last summer, and I remember asking him about Mihajlovic, kind of if he was scared of him. This 18-year-old Scottish kid didn't speak a word of Italian. I was like, what's it like working under Sinisa? And it was quite funny because he really, really liked him, despite the fact that they couldn't really understand each other that well. And he said he's got a bit of a temper. He makes his feelings very clear, and if you get something wrong when you're drilling set pieces, for example, he'll make sure you know about it. But he actually really likes that and respected that about him. So it feels like it was done in a way that wasn't aggressive, it wasn't confrontational, it was just very forthright. And I feel like that's the kind of guidance probably that these young players need. He wasn't mollycoddling them, he wasn't pampering them, but he also created good relationships despite being firm, and always gave these guys chances. He absolutely launched, in Hickey's case, he absolutely launched that guy's career by giving him the opportunity as a teenager from Scotland to play regularly in Serie A and eventually earn a move to Premier League. So I think it's fantastic what he's done there.
Yeah, I think he hasn't been very lucky, because with AC Milan, he wasn't lucky to. He didn't have a great team available. So that's, a manager can go so far. You need the players to perform. So this is the biggest problem he had. But yeah, again, Alistair, just to recap, it's the biggest regret, and his dream was to manage Lazio. And I hope Lazio does something like, maybe his shirt close to Maurizio Sarri on the bench. That would be very touching. Yes, I hope something like that, because, we were all hoping for that. And it's disappointed that he never had the chance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But, I think we remember him for being a great man, a fantastic laziale, a fantastic player, and someone who universally admired, really, both by the Lazio support and beyond that. So, yeah, I mean, I think all that's left to say really is rest in peace, because it's been a very sad period for all of us. And yeah, hopefully next time we speak, it'll be about something a bit more happy.
Yeah, let's hope so. But we thought we needed to do a podcast about Sinisa Mihajlovic, one of the legends of Lazio that left us far too early. So again, thanks, Alistair, for joining me in this difficult podcast. Enjoy your holiday. And guys, thanks for your support. And yeah, we'll be back probably next year when the league will be back. Take care, everybody, and we'll be back in January. Thank you very much.
Cheers.